Looks like we are just about ready, getting the signal, and we are on. Hi, everybody. This is Steve Sadlodowski, publisher of BayouBuzz.com, and today we're going to be talking both national and local Louisiana politics with Jim Brown and Bernie Pinsonat. And so I'm going to ask Jim Brown to, at this point, kind of take over for a second as I kind of get things going on Facebook and Periscope and every place else that we're streaming this to at this point in time. Okay, Jim, how you doing? And go right ahead, please.
Well, I'm glad to be with you, Steve, and join Bernie. And Bernie, Steve, and I have talked a lot about national issues. And a slant that brings it back home to Louisiana is the relevance of the Louisiana congressional delegation to what's happening on a national level. And you might be someone to talk to about this. I think your listeners would find it interesting that, first of all, you've got Senator Cassidy, who in grand fashion announced a health care solution that got virtually no play, no interest nationally, and kind of went down the tubes when the final vote came out. And now you've got the other senator, John Kennedy, who seems like he's already posturing to run for governor next time. He seems like he spends a good bit of his day picking fights down in Louisiana, not only at the governor and others, but so there's a story today, I think, in maybe the Morning Advocate, where he's in a controversy over the use of paintings from the State Museum. And I guess you've got Garrett Graves, who was picking a big fight with Wildlife and Fisheries Department here ways back, and now is undercutting the governor on some flood claims. I've never seen, in the time I've been around government, and that's been around for eons, but I was in public life for 28 years. I never saw the congressional delegation picking the fights back home like they have. Bernie, what's your thoughts on that? And how you go up to Washington, you kind of disappear on the national level, and a la Mary Landry or Bennett Johnson, we never hear from them again. They move up there, put their kids in school, and say, Holla Vista, Louisiana. We got the congressional delegation here that are very involved with what's happening down in the legislature, the governor, and other aspects. Bernie, you might want to start by commenting on that.
Well, as you remember, I worked for the United States Senator Bennett Johnson for about, 9 years, 8.5 or whatever it was. And yeah, our role was Washington, D.C., and to get aid for the state, get help from the state Corps of Engineers. Bennett was on that head of that committee for a while. He was on the Energy Committee, which was very important in Louisiana. Most of the time he spent, by the way, getting federal grants for LSU and ULL or wherever, our university system. So he spent. No, the state by the way, getting interested in us is that there was some danger to us. There was someone on the horizon who may be running against us, so we were careful. We paid attention to that. But as far as who was governor and all of the what you see today, is different from those days with John Grow and Mary Landry and Bennett Johnson. But Vitter started that. It was a change when Vitter became United States Senator. Senator he used to take shots at Kathleen Blanco, and that, I guess you'd say Kennedy's following along what Vitter did. Vitter is the one who initiated, I guess you'd say, that change in attitude with D.C. But, Jim, there's a big difference in Washington. When I did the surveys, when these guys came home to run for that Senate seat, Bustani and Fleming really were not that well known back home. In the days of my, being involved in that, we had embedded reporters from the Advocate. We had a reporter in D.C. from the Picayune. We had a reporter from Shreveport up there. Today, those people don't really get a lot of coverage back home of what they're doing unless they're doing something significant. And the question is that there's so little significant contributions they can make. As you said, we do have a doctor who's United States Senator. Whatever he was working on was almost a waste of time because politics of the healthcare is more about politics than it is of actually what the process is and actually what the outcome is. So it has changed dramatically, and I'm not surprised because these guys there's not really a lot going on up there that they can come back home and say, look, I got this done, I got that done, I brought money to LSU, I brought money to LSU, Alexander, any of that. So it's changing dramatically as you and I sit here and talk. Politics of Washington and Louisiana are really becoming more and more the same.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure it's for the good of the state. It seems like it's better when the workings are going on, but I just have never seen the undermining like you have right now. You're right. Senator Vitter started on his quest to come home, and so we don't have the seniority and very few relevance, even in subcommittee chairman. And now at this early stage, maybe that's not that relevant with the Trump administration. The seniority means that much. You've got people going off the deep end. You know, you had Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, a number of senators just take off and run for president last time after being there only a couple of years. So maybe the seniority doesn't mean as much as it did in the past. How do you use seniority up there?
Well, Bennett Johnson became chairman of Energy. He oversaw, the Appropriation Committee. He oversaw funding for Corps of Engineers, which is a huge deal for Louisiana. And those were things that were very important. But I want to remind you of something. I had left him by then. He came back home from Louisiana, and Bennett started running all these ads about, oh, what a great job I did. Look at all these projects. And Woody gave him a hard time when he ended up not having much of a race. But then he came back, and you had Duke running against him, and all of us were cautioning him. And it was really a strange idea to him that he couldn't come home and take credit for all the money he sent back here, because at that point in time, the money was as big an issue. Federal money being spent with the deficits were becoming a big issue. Really and truly, he had to kind of change his ads towards the end of that race because he was catching so much heat from the new evolving Louisiana, Jim, on bringing home the bacon wasn't that popular. So the Russell Long, Bennett Johnson, John Breaux days were slowly changing, and it has changed, although I will agree with you. I'll look back at the great things we did for the state, the money we brought to LSU, the availability of money for flooding and levees and all of this stuff that Bennett was able to get. And today, that's just not something that you hear these people coming home and bragging about.
Well, it's a different world. There's no doubt about that. And we hopefully have some influence. But right now, it seems like it's so much up in the air. And Steve, you're working on that. I'd like to get Bernie's view of when you're talking about controversy, you kind of have pitted Bernie very accurately, the Washington mindset versus the Louisiana mindset. But now it seems like there is a great deal of consternation and even chaos in the state legislature and what happens at the state capitol. You've got a governor that is having fights picked with him, and he's picking the fights. I see the attorney general sued him again today. You having some fallout from relationships with the legislature. You got the Speaker of the House, who seems to be under siege to some degree with charges that he really can't lead. And so there's a lot of confusion down in Baton Rouge at the state capitol right now, isn't there?
I would say that's correct. Well, you look, one of the things that I can say is that you have a problem. You have a Democratic governor who, in my opinion, he was literally put there by the Republicans. The Republicans did more to elect him than he did to elect himself. And it's great for him that he's there, but you're talking about basically the legislature, maybe 10 or 12 Republicans who vote for him as much as they can. I mean, he's in a very hostile environment that coming on the heels of John Kennedy, who was anti-spending, who attacked John Bel Edwards daily on, we don't need money, we need to cut spending. Remember his little whip. So that was the backdrop. And by the way, I told that all year last year. I thought it was interesting. As treasurer, which Mary Landrieu, by the way, propelled herself into the governor's race. As treasurer, remember, she beat up, criticized Edward Edwards daily, So that position has always been, since Mary Landrieu used as a stepping stone, and I watched that, saw it happen. And that is also the backdrop that we looked at last year, Jim, with John Kennedy using that to attack John Bel Edwards literally every day and saying we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. So it's not. I mean, this is a daily news cycle of Washington politics, and it's surprised like you and I. It's like the chaos is unbelievable, but I'm not sure that reality or calm or moving forward is of any consequence to the legislators. It's all about getting towards the next step of what they think is wanted back home. Which there's not a lot of people that come to Baton Rouge to solve problems, because you can sit here and say, well, I hate the Congress, I hate the legislature, but if I poll them, they love their congressman, they love their state rep, they love their state senator. And if I ask them, do you want the vote to raise taxes to solve the budget problem, they'll say, no, I want my rep not to vote for those taxes. So there's a disconnect between reality of the lack of solving problems and then the politics of Republicans versus Democrats. And that's where the rubber's hitting the road and not making a lot of sense as far as overall achievement.
And you brought up the taxes, and there's been a lot of heavy proposals. A lot of voters say, gosh, this is when you had 3 special sessions, you've been raising taxes right and left on us. Now there's proposals to increase the gasoline tax by as much as 20% and find ways to restructure the sales tax and the income tax to where businesses take a bigger hit and are taxed on their gross receipts, not on how much they actually net. So will that weariness, you think, stop any real tax reform or tax changes in this coming session?
I would say right now the $400 million deficit, I don't really see that as something. I don't see the legislatures going out of their way to fix $400 million. I think if he doesn't come up with some workable solution on the gross receipts tax by bringing it way down and just and breaking even, trying to make this thing break even and not raise new revenue, maybe he can do it, and that's what the talk is right now. But as far as you're 1,000% correct, the problem he has is at some point in time, Louisiana, this is Trump set records for votes he got. It's still a very red state. If I was polling in Boston, I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation about taxes. But at some point in time, it's going to be pretty easy for someone to come back like a Kennedy or whoever else and say, we haven't really gotten a lot done. We've raised a lot of money. None of the problems we've fixed. We've lost 25,000 jobs and whatever else they say. And one of the things that I think the governor would like to do is get rid of that penny, because we've got the highest sales tax in the country. And by the way, my polls were exactly correct last year. About 85% of we, 81% of we did not want to pay more income tax. And at the same time, 54% were opposed to a sales tax. But in that 54, as you know, that's not a real bad number. But most of the people who were opposed to it still conceded that if we're going to solve this budget problem, I don't mind paying another penny because everybody pays it. Whereas income tax, there is that thing with Republicans who were opposed to it, right at 90%. So that's the budget dilemma. And can he get rid of that penny or swap it? I think it would help his reelection. I think that's why this new approach is to get rid of the penny and swap it to get spread it out with some new tax. So I think the session is political posturing, trying to get ready. And the last thing he wants is to have to keep asking for taxes, stabilize the budget. That would be great for him. I think there are enough Republicans though in the Capitol who have gone along with him so far and given him enough money to not shut down dramatic cuts. in the universities or in healthcare, which is the only two things you got left to cut, as you know.
Okay, so let me interrupt for a second, if you don't mind. Jim, I sent it over to your Facebook page, and if you can go share it,
Sure.
certainly appreciate it. Let your fans and friends on Facebook know. So, what we have done at this point in time is this: we have posted this discussion with Bernie Pinsonat and Jim Brown on Facebook, whether it's Jim Brown's Facebook page, my Facebook page, Louisiana Politics group. This is also being played on Twitter and Periscope, on Bayou Buzz, on YouTube, and LinkedIn. Whew, it's really something else. That being the case, let's just move over to U.S. politics for just a few minutes, because I know that we have some people here watching on Twitter and Periscope who want to hear what our views and what the latest take is relative to, say, what's going on in Trump land and U.S. politics, and also dovetailing it with what's going on here in Louisiana with the Louisiana legislative session. So just in terms of one last thing, let me just say this. Those people who are watching, you can see at the bottom of the screen, there is a telephone number as well as a number underneath that. Those numbers are numbers for you to call. I'll put it over here just in case you can't see it, or I'll put it up here. I think you see it better. It's toll-free number and the meeting ID. So go ahead and call that number, ask questions, or make your comment. Isn't this technology incredible, Bernie?
It is great. Unbelievable.
It really is, isn't it? Okay, so.
Hey, Steve, let me jump in a little bit. And it's one of the reasons, responding to Bernie's earlier comment, that it used to be that all these newspapers in Louisiana had reporters in Washington, D.C., why they don't anymore, because that used to be the only way you get your news. It would be sent back to the paper, and the TV stations would pick up the news from the morning paper and put it on the evening news. Now with your technology, Steve, and so many venues on the internet, that newspapers aren't as relevant anymore, and therefore papers can't afford to keep those reporters up in Washington as they did it for so many years.
Well,
yeah, good point, Steve. That's exactly what happened.
And obviously, we'll that's a subject for a whole new program, talking about media and new media, and the changing landscape. So let's talk about the landscape right now in D.C. What the heck is going on? Is Donald Trump moving towards the center? Jump ball.
Well, I would just say this. I think there might be a demarcation line, or a kind of a change of direction after the missile launch this last week. The missile launch took place in Syria, and it showed that Trump means business. And then it seemed like once that happened, there seemed to be an accommodation from both sides to maybe talk with a little less wild rhetoric. And Trump seems to be moving more towards the center with what he's allowing his people to do around him, or what they're willing to say. So, and I've been interested to see a number of the national correspondents who say that maybe Trump's kind of getting a little more confidence. He always had a lot of bluster, but now he's got a little bit more confidence. They tie it to this long. So I don't know if that on itself it makes a difference, Steve, but he's getting a little bit more credibility and a little bit more praise than, say, he was a week or 10 days ago.
Okay. By the way, Jim, you may want to close your, if you've already shared it, why don't you go and close your Facebook browser? I think we're getting a little feedback from that. So if you can close it. Bernie, now obviously, you were up there in Washington, D.C., and is it just a normal, is it normal for somebody to run at the right and then to move towards the center, as it looks like Trump might be doing?
Well, I don't think that. I mean, he's put a lot of very conservative people running the government. I think he's got a lot of very conservative people tearing down some of the EPA stuff. I think he's moving. I think Jim's correct in one major area, and it's important for him to learn the lessons as quick as possible. And he's not he's not running around trying to please everybody on what's the next step on Syria, Russia. He did what he did, and now he's not trying to go out and solve the world problems, which he said he wouldn't do. I think the interesting approach he said today, he's telling Russia, you want to be their friend or my friend, which is an interesting approach. You're not going to be our friend, the United States, which Russia, by the way, is nothing like it was 50 years ago. Somebody who with knowledge says they sent a bucket of rust. The Russians don't have the military capability used to have, and I think this is what this is about. He's been empire building in the Middle East, but he doesn't have a lot of money. The standard of living in Russia is like a joke compared to the United States. He does have some oil money, but not a lot. But I think he's wading out into the water, and he's being very careful in foreign policy. He's making some good moves related to North Korea and Syria. As far as Jim said, some of the experts say these are cautious, smart moves. He's not throwing his hands in the air and waving wildly and threatening people, which was sort of what we started with. So I would agree with Jim's assessment. I think the policy stuff is what's interesting. Jim knows this as well as I do. Everybody says it's so easy to take. We're gonna repeal and replace Obamacare. Well, Obamacare started another government program that has benefit, that has people that need it, and it's an entitlement program that brought a lot of people into it and getting those. Now we got to pay for them, and then you have the problem with people who are paying for all those new people. How do you reduce that cost? So it's easy to talk about some of these problems, and the Republicans, you would have thought, had the repeal and replace solution at hand, and it would be done within 10 or 12 days, 2 weeks. As of today, there is no plan in sight. And yesterday, I think the White House even announced that they're starting over on the tax reform effort. So it's one thing, the foreign policy is challenging and all of that, but when you drain the swamp and start trying to change big government programs with legislation, and everybody's idea of reform is different, everybody's idea of reform winners and losers is different. So Trump's run into what I was pretty sure he would run into, which is none of these programs are easy to get rid of. None of them are easy to change. And so he's now at reality, and I think he's more accepting the fact that he can't get what he wants done immediately. And so what impressed me is he did a total stop. Okay, I'm done with healthcare. We'll work on that later. I'm not going to spend any more energy, and just walked away from it. And we had been promised by him for the last 45 days that this was a done deal. We're bringing you the greatest program in the history of the world. It didn't work out, and he kind of pivoted away from it, walked away from it, and really not about it. That's the reality in Washington.
Yeah, I think Bernie's right on, Steve, in terms of, that was a defeat that was so surprising for 3 years, rather for the last 2 years in the campaign. The first day in office, he's going to abolish Obamacare, and after making a very solid effort, just said, well, that's it. We're just going to move on and to the next stage. And you think he says might pick come down the line a little bit on his fights and pick one of a lesser challenge. But boy, he's jumped into tax reform, which probably is the biggest challenge you could take on. So we're in for some interesting times in the next couple of months to see how he parries and how he directs. But I think out of all this, I think he's realizing he's got to have some support across the aisle. He can get through the judge, the new justice, and he can get a few things like that done. But it's to do anything really complicated, it's going to take some Democrats to kind of be more than halfway.
Yeah, Steve's right. And it's here at the Capitol, you watch the Republicans at the state Capitol, they're a minority party. There's not a lot left. There's not a lot left in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And the Democrats during the session, they'll caucus right there on the floor. They can immediately know what they're going to do and how they're going to do it here at the state legislature. Whereas when you're talking about Republicans at the Capitol, you got 3 or 4 different groups that don't exactly come together on anything and everything, and Republicans are like that because their bases are so different. So yeah, Bahra's got one group that, 90 millions, we want to hold the line at 99 million, and what's where that he said, okay, yeah, we'll do that, and he went back and he had the other half, the Tea Party, whatever you want to call them, said, no, we're not doing that. So Republicans are not as easy to herd like cattle as Democrats are, because Democrats, even in Washington, as here in Louisiana, they're taking beatings over the last 10, 12 years, and so sticking together is much simpler for them because their numbers are so down up there and here, and every battle they fight, it's the ones that really mean something. Whether Republicans fight over anything and everything because they control everything, but controlling everything means coming up with solutions, and it's hard to get that bigger group together, all agreeing on the same thing, and that's what you're seeing with Republicans.
The other thing.
Go ahead.
The other thing I was say, when we talked about the split in Louisiana and how you mentioned that John Bel Edwards were basically elected because of all the infighting with Republicans. Do you pick up down there any interest, Bernie, to abolish this open primary, this guerrilla primary that we have right now? It seems like that would behoove the Republicans to do something like that. But I haven't heard much. Have you heard anything along that line?
No, and as two people who have seen this for a while, I have no idea why they don't. But Edwards changed all of that because he didn't like it that they fought and killed each other. The Republicans had picked Dave Treen, remember, and nobody attacked him, and he went through a bruising battle with those days Bennett Johnson. So Edwin is the one who threw in the towel on that and said, let's everybody run together and everybody take their share of beating, and everybody has to raise the money at the same time. I don't know why that benefits Republicans anymore because they're in control, but Jim, you're 1,000% correct, but there is no discussion of that.
Yeah, you think there would be, based on what they saw in this last election. I would think someone at least put a bill in to do that, but I haven't seen anything like that, and I've been surprised.
Yeah, well, they're the Republicans have so much money and they had so many candidates that wanted to run. It's hard to control 3 or 4 heavyweights like you had 2 years ago. You had Jay Darden, you had Scott Angel, you had David Bitter. We have 3 major, 1 Democrat. But those 3 Republicans were heavyweights, and they all had $5, $6, $7, $8 million. And who's going to step in and stop them from killing each other? Nobody. And that's what they eventually did. But I don't know. The problem with the Republicans, it's pretty standard when you get to be as dominant as they are. They tend to start fighting among themselves because they've been so successful. There's no need to be so unified, and they don't seem to understand. They were unified to get there when there were smaller numbers, and the minute they get there, Democrats and Republicans, first thing they start doing is fighting among themselves and undoing all they've accomplished over a long period of time and a lot of money.
Okay, so who's running the legislature? Let me ask you that. That was a article that Tyler Bridges wrote and was criticized by one quarter. But who's running the legislature?
Well, I think you got Jim and I's longtime friend. You got to put Senator Alario as one of the major power players. Period. And I don't know. I know him very well. Actually, did his last campaign when he ran for the Senate. John is always trying to help a governor within reason. He always trying to get something done for the state. But you've got, which is Republican, by the way, but it's really not Republican because you have a Democratic governor, and they have enough. He has some sway with some Republican senators. He's got sway with the Democrats and especially the Black Caucus. The House is a different mixed bag. You've got Democrats, you've got the Black Caucus, you've got the I guess you'd say the gang of eight, they call them, the Republicans who support John Bel Edwards, and you've got the conservative 10 who are very conservative. Those are the freshmen, the 10 and the 8. And you've got the second term Republicans who are mishmash, and then you've got the ones who are termed out. So, I mean, you got 5 or 6 different groups in the House, and on any given day, they can all take different positions.
But I think Bernie made the point of starting off with John Lario. John Lario is a fascinating person. He's the longest serving legislator, I think, right now. He's been a survivor. He's been viciously attacked in the campaign, Bernie, that you ran for him by Republicans.
He was the number one. He was the number one target.
A massive
of the Republican Party.
And he survived that. And John is the ultimate survivor in terms of the legislature. Very well respected. Someone who takes an interest in a broad range of issues. And as a consequence, let me tell you what. If John Lario was not president of the Senate, then whatever problems John Bel Edwards, the present governor, has, you could multiply them by 5 or 6, because without Lario, this state would be floundering in terms of legislative response. And I say that with a great deal of respect. And some people think, well, he's playing all sides and he's a wheeling dealing politician. Well, he gets things done. And when it used to be in the old days, you had Michael Keith as a major power player, Victor Busey on the side. But if you want to, and you'd say, if you want to get things done, you better go see one of those two. Well, now, if you want to get things done, you better very early talk to John Lario. He's been just a tremendous force down there, and something that I can see why the governor caters to him, because without him, without Lario, he'd be in real trouble.
Okay, once again, let me just say that if anybody has, excuse me, a question, or wants to make a comment, the number is right above here, U.S. toll-free number, along with the meeting ID. So just call the number and plug in the meeting ID. Be glad to hear from you. So anyway, you were going to say, Bernie, go ahead.
Well, I can go back to especially the last 4 years of Jindal, where Jindal had lost a lot of power and there was no leadership. But for John Lario being able to pass legislation, push along most of Jindal's agenda, Jim's correct. No matter where he's been, he's always been a force. And any governor, whether he's speaker is sitting in the audience, sitting in his seat in the House or wherever, Lario's had that unique ability to, everybody turns to him to handle the process to get something passed, primarily to get it passed. You don't see Lario's out there as one of these guys who's trying to kill legislation. That's not what he's there for. So Jim's exactly correct. I know him. He's a friend of mine, but he's also stand off and look at him. And he is totally remarkable in politics in this state, where the deterioration of the cooperation and partnerships and deterioration of political divide like we have in D.C. One thing hasn't changed, and it's Senator John Lario. He makes the system work as well as it can.
Steve, I asked him one time, I said, because in most elections, he's unopposed. He had this one really major effort with Republicans opposing him, but he's been unopposed more than he's been opposed. I said, Mr. President, how come you don't have any opposition? He said, well, it's simple. He says, I just tell all my people that the job of senator is under civil service, and it's just must be a mistake to have my name on the ballot. That really doesn't count because I'm civil service. So something works because he always seems to get reelected.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
Well, he's also like, a little different, but Republican businessmen, Republican big guys who, they know that it's good to have a John Lario around, because when you're trying to get something done that's for the good of the state, especially major projects or whatever it is, Republicans don't look at John Alario party-wise. They look at him as somebody who keeps his word.
Shoot.